Afternoon, Si.
Hi.
Thank you for coming and speaking with me today. We're just going to have a conversation about your time here as, I need to get this right, vicar, priest, father.
Vicar, Reverend. Si,
and friend to me and lots of people here in All Saints, West Ham.
Yep.
Thanks for joining. Perhaps start from when you came to East London, when you came to the area.
Yeah, so we being my wife and I and our two kids, moved up in between the lockdowns in 2022. Is that right? No, 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's what lockdown's done, right? Like it's messed with our sense of time and seasons and perspective.
Yeah, so we were in Bournemouth doing sort of vocational training. As a vicar, you do 3 years on-the-job training. You do a 3-year degree and then 3 years on the job, and so you get 6 years. You could almost be a doctor, and so we did that in Bournemouth. But that came to an end, and we were invited up basically. So we got invited by the bishop and by a friend of mine called Al, who leads a group of churches in East London called Saint. We talk about actually one church that meets in many parishes. And so we moved up here in the end of August, beginning of September. Yeah, 2020.
In the middle of lockdown?
Middle of lockdown. We were literally just allowed to move. People had been delaying because
you weren't driving to test your eyes, you were driving for an actual...
We were really driving to actually be somewhere. And we've been here just over 2 and a bit years.
Amazing.
And we love it.
And what was that invitation like? You know, London, very different from Bournemouth. And was there anything particularly about Stratford, West Ham that you thought, this is different or interesting, or what was your reaction?
So we met in Watford, so northwest London. Watford likes to think it's London, it's not really London.
On the border. It depends.
Inside the M25. So we always assumed in our married life that actually we'd be in London. My wife works in Canary Wharf, and so she had a really long commute when we were in Watford. And we always sensed within us that one day we would move east, partly for her job, partly because it is just a massively intriguing part of the world. And the invitation came. The church is really interesting. It's a fascinating place to work. It's not just a job, it's a vocation. I don't actually get paid to do a job. I get paid so I don't have to go and get other work in order to be able to serve the church. And for some people, they get placed somewhere. Hey, we think you'd be really good to go here. But for us, we were like, we want to do this stuff, build a church with friends, because we think actually right at the heart of, I'm a Christian, right at the heart of the Christian faith is friendship with God and then friendship with other people. And so we wanted to do it with friends. So towards the end of my curacy, we just went to all of our friends and said, hey, is there any opportunity of what might be next that we could explore? And as people of faith, we prayed about that and we asked for wise counsel. And so Al, via another friend, just said, hey, we've been invited by the bishop to help revitalise this amazing church. You can see the building here. It's a partly 900-year-old building. People have been worshipping here for hundreds of years. Millions of people have been through this building. And the bishop just recognised it's been through a tough period, just needs a bit of stability, a bit of help. Partnering with an existing congregation and then start some new things alongside it. And it just stirred something in my heart. So we came up just before lockdown in 2019, actually, to sort of explore the area, meet the team, and if I'm honest, we sort of got here and we were like, gosh, I don't know that we would choose to live in West Ham, and yet being here, we have totally fallen in love with this part of the world.
And why was that? Because of the sense of the scale of the challenge, the complexity of the things you had to...
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
It's an incredible part of the world that is so overpopulated. There are a lot of people here. Moving from Bournemouth, we thought Bournemouth was relatively busy. Actually, you come here, it's like, flip, there are a lot of people.
People on
I
top of
remember
each
the
other.
first time we were going into Westfield, and we were like, gosh, this is a bit overwhelming. And so there was a bit of trepidation in us of, gosh, can we do this?
Yeah.
It's not the most beautiful aesthetically part of the world, and so there's part of my sort of middle class arrogance that is like, oh, I need to live somewhere beautiful for it to be a beautiful place to live. And so having to lay down some of that stuff, get over myself really, to say, actually, there's all the potential in the world here. And I remember praying about it, and I felt God say that the next Einstein is in Newham, the next Mozart is in Newham, the next people, Elon Musks, who are going to change the world, are here, but they're not being given the opportunity because of where they live, potentially. So half of the kids grow up just under the breadline. We looked at those stats and we were like, that is where Jesus would be. If Jesus were walking this earth today, he would go to the places where no one else, in sort of earthly terms, you don't aspire to live in those challenging places. You want to go to middle of Hertfordshire and leafy Surrey or wherever. The sort of corporate ladder of getting more money so you can get a bigger house and move out to the beautiful reaches, far reaches of Essex or whatever. We were like, actually, we want to move to the places where we can have the most impact with our lives. And we sort of sensed that this was the place for us. And so some of it was choice. And actually, the first time we sort of came here, we were a bit, oh gosh, but actually, the second time we came here, we were like, wow, look at this place. There is all the opportunity in the world here. And I think, as a man of faith, that was something that God did in my heart. We actually genuinely just love this place. We love the people. We don't know all of them, of course. There are 19,000 people just in our little patch. And you're like, that is a lot of people to get to know. But
yeah, and so maybe we can delve into that. So from where you were now, or then, to where you are now, how has it been understanding the lives of those people that you were called to serve? Those, how's that experience been?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massively ongoing journey. I think I have certain privileges as a white man that others aren't afforded, and I'm aware that puts lenses up for me and expectations, and so I'm having to proactively step into spaces to try and learn about people's lives. And but most of it comes, I've found, through relationships, and not just with people on the ground, but people who are serving those on the ground. But it's a massive learning curve. Like, London is so transient. Well, that's one of the things that's really surprising.
And Newham is the most transient of populations and boroughs. I think people on average stay here a year or two and move on, which is one of the shortest in London.
Which is incredible. And so trying to serve a shifting population all the time is really interesting. So we started during lockdown, actually. We started something called Lighthouse. We do it across all of our locations in East London, and basically we opened the doors and we gave out some food parcels. Here's a week's worth of food. And there were queues down the churchyard, lots of people who needed that service at that time. Actually, when we came out of lockdown and we began to ease back into whatever normal life looks like, that group of people had shifted and changed, and that service was no longer needed. What we're finding now is actually there's a group of migrant families who are living in hotels just up the road, who, through no fault of their own, find themselves living not as like family units in a home, but as a number behind a door in a hotel. They don't have like autonomy of when they can eat and what they eat. They're finding it hard to get into schools and get jobs, and language is a barrier and all of that sort of stuff. And we're like, well, maybe we could just gently begin to serve that community. Yeah. So we know that we're never going to be able to serve everybody, but maybe there's some people that we can do our job with, and there'll be other people.
And do you mind if I dig into that a little bit? So interesting that there are some families who aren't living in reasonable accommodation, aren't family units, as you say, given numbers. And then if you extrapolate that across the whole of, Stratford, West Ham, this part of East London that we live in, juxtapose with a new group of families, and I know this isn't immediately in our parish, but on the Olympic Village side, who might have some of those privileges that you alluded to earlier. How do you kind of tie a narrative, a fabric, a societal fabric that says we are all one, Stratford, Newham? I don't know if you have any ideas about that or thoughts on that, particularly, or is it quite hyper-localised for you and West Ham here?
So in terms of where I pray, if I may use that language, I pray for West Ham, but I also pray for East London, but I also pray for the world.
A lot of prayers.
A lot of prayers. But I actually strangely think the church is the answer. In my experience, the church is the only place where you get wealthy bankers sat next to a homeless guy and they sit there as peers. I don't think there's any other space in society where that genuinely happens. It's not the bankers there helping out this poor person. It's actually we're here as family, because for me, that's what the church is, really, is a space for people from all walks of life, all ethnicities, all demographics, all backgrounds to come together and say, actually, we're one, not because of who we are, but because of who Jesus is. And there's a theologian called Scott McKnight, brilliant theologian, and he talks about the fellowship of difference with a T, not E-N-C-E, but E-N-T-S, as in we are all different, but we are called to be together as a family. And so for me, I think the church is a huge answer to some of that challenge of real wealth living next to real poverty, of privilege living right next to the downtrodden and the overlooked. But I also think on the other part of that is that there's a real call on us as followers of Jesus, as Christians, to serve those who are overlooked and downtrodden and forgotten. Like all through the Bible, if there's one sort of thing that the Bible sort of tells us is that God is love, and that he loves everybody equally, but he really sides with the overlooked and the offended and the downtrodden. And so I want to proactively take all the money out of the hands of the wealthy and the pockets of the wealthy people in order for us as a church, not as me, but as everybody who gathers together to serve into those communities that have the least.
Just on the first point made about church being a place, a platform, an equaliser platform almost. That is absolutely true. As someone who attends this church regularly, I feel that. What would you say, though, an almost obvious follow-up is for a multi-ethnic population like Newham, which actually bucks the trend nationally, because I think nationally, faith attendance, etc., is either stagnating or on the decline. How do you then bring that together for a place like Newham, which has got Muslims, Sikhs, Jews, so many other faiths?
Yeah, for sure. Again, a real challenge, a huge question. What I've found being in Newham, and again I'm still just massively learning, is there's an openness both to conversation around faith but to people of other faith. I think it's actually fairly unique, I've found in Newham, that people don't have a faith. Most people have a faith of some sort, so a faith conversation actually is a unifying factor. I am a man of faith. When we were doing our sort of food parcels, we partnered with a local guy called Ilyas. He serves hundreds and hundreds of young Muslim families, and actually we worked together in order to give out parcels at Christmas. And I was like, this is how faith comes together in some way. And now I'm a man of faith, but it's actually about a person of Jesus, and so then there comes the challenge of, well, we've got slightly different faith and a different interpretation, but actually where we can work together, I think we should. But I love Newham because you can talk about faith. Like, again, other places I've lived, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, and people are a bit shy of that, but actually here it's, I don't know, there's an ability to talk about faith in a whole new way. I love it.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Just make sure. What have you found most challenging about your time here so far?
Yeah, London is relentless. It's
in what way? The speed, the kind of culture of people just trying to get on with stuff, or
all
the
of
cost,
that.
and
All of that. Yeah, it feels like we're constantly on the go. You get up, you drop the kids at school, you go to work, you do your day, you get back, and then there's something in the evening, and then it just feels like relentless. But it sounds a negative thing. Relentless isn't a negative thing. I actually love that. I thrive under that sort of hard-working culture. I think the bit that I miss from that is the pause in the day just to build a relationship with people. Like, you have to look 6 weeks ahead in your diary just to get a evening at the pub with your mates. And so it's learning that I've got to proactively try and build relationships with people. I think London could be a place where there are more people than ever, but actually we all bypass each other, and so it can be an incredibly lonely place.
Yeah, there's I'm going to butcher it slightly, but there's some new thinking I've read about rest being almost a protest to that relentlessness and that modern day capitalism that we most of us are in, because actually there is something quite captive about that, which is that you are going in that relentless cycle, which you can almost never escape from, because those structures are there, and it takes immense privilege or injection of some capital to escape that. Do you think it's possible to create those pockets of rest for people in Newham? Is that possible? I mean, particularly with some people who are just in very dark, depressing situations, having to work 2-3 jobs to maintain a home, etc.
I think it's probably one of Newham's biggest challenges, is to find ways to create I'm a big believer that life ought to be lived. There are many of us who just exist. We sort of do the grind to just pay the bills, and partly that's why I'm really excited about opening this space up for the families in the hotel. All we're going to do is we're going to put a table down the middle and throw a meal for them, but it will give them a space that is different, where they can rest. And rest might not look like sitting on your own reading a book, or sitting on a beach with a sunset or whatever. It can just be family together doing something that's different.
Can I dig into that a little bit? Because
course.
like, looking at some of the history around here, I know that this church was used, I don't know the right word to call it, but it was an anchor for the community, particularly those who were serving in the World Wars. And I was on the parish council in a church I used to attend in Canning Town. So I've come across the Church of England's tradition, and how sometimes the pace of change with other parts of the country and society, there's sometimes a little bit of a disconnect there. Are you finding that in trying to open up this space or innovate to accommodate what you're finding in Newham, or have things been quite easygoing, so to speak?
It is both the greatest challenge for the Church of England, I think, and also one of its greatest strengths, in that we offer a space for people that is so unique. You don't walk into buildings like this very often. So what we're trying to do as Saint is parallel the traditional with a contemporary thing. So we often run 2 or 3 different services on a Sunday that offer different things for different people. And so our morning service is communion. And actually that I find that it's full of space and time, and it's familiar language for people who've been in there for years. And so that is a real gift to people. The problem becomes when if that thing isn't willing to innovate around the edges of it, to say, but there are more people who connect in different ways. And so like at a supermarket, if you open more checkouts, more people are going to come through the checkouts. I'm similar here. We need to offer more checkouts to connect with more people in a way that they would like us to connect with them. Not say, hey, you need to fit this mold in order to be here. You belong here anyway. Like the Church of England doesn't have membership because otherwise what it says is you lot are out and us lot are in. Whereas actually we don't have a membership because we want everyone to be part of the Church of England. That's why it's the Church of England. It's for everybody. And so I want us to create innovation and creative spaces to welcome everybody in. And what you don't have to be is a person of faith. You can have all faith and no faith, and we'll welcome you here. There will be times when we will explicitly talk about Jesus. And if you don't want to be in the room at that time, that's also okay, but everybody is welcome. And then just to return to the sort of rest thing, I think we can offer something here that is really different to anything anywhere else. There aren't actually many community spaces.
No, free space, I think, across the modern world is declining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Community centres are closing down, all that sort of stuff. Parks have gates on at whatever time. No, you don't want to be in there after dark anyway, but it's like, actually, we've got this incredible space here that we can open up for people just to come and be together and hang out, in a lonely world, to create connections for people is a real gift. So actually, we just had Hey Baby. We had 116 toddlers, noughts to fours here, plus their parents. That's like a year in. So we had, 220 odd people here today. And it's just word of mouth. All we've done is, Becca is amazing. She puts out a load of mats and a load of toys. It's great coffee and it's great cake. And we just opened a space for people to connect. I think it's absolutely essential that human connection is vital to real life, really living.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
No, absolutely, it does. It does. We've spoken about this a little bit about the sense of a new build community, like there was actually new housing around that Olympic Village bit. For us to say in 10 years' time, we have, we don't have a divide, so to speak, but we have one common identity. What do you think are the things, maybe not even physically, structurally, that we need to put in place, but perhaps just ideologically we need to be thinking about to make sure those things do come about and there is some kind of shared understanding or identity? Or is that, do you think, beyond the reach of councils and local leaders, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, a huge question, isn't it? Are the families who've moved here from Afghanistan going to have a shared identity with the families who've moved here from China, with the local kids who grew up on the local council estate? Are they going to find a shared identity? In part, I hope so. I think there is an ownership on an area that comes as you live here. The transience is a real challenge to that. Like you said, people move in and out all the time. Partly, I hope that they don't lose their identity, though. Like, there's something beautiful about bringing together cultures and us sharing the best of ourselves with each other. And so there's that challenge of, am I willing to give up part of my culture and upbringing in order to learn and grow and share with other people? And I think if we posture ourselves in a different way, so most of our world, in my experience, my limited experience, is postured towards me, as in, I'm the center of my world. I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure I thrive and grow. And I think a community-centric mindset says, actually, how can we do this together for the benefit of one another? And I actually think we're better for that. We're better people when we're doing it in relationship. We are better at doing things when we do it together. And I think we will form a community within West Ham and Stratford and Canning Town and Plaistow and Forest Gate, and you start to see these sort of ownership and identity. But as Newham, we we can say, actually, we love this place, we want to be here, and we want to live for the benefit of one another. And that's actually a really Christian concept of, it's like a self-sacrificial sort of love that chooses and prefers the other, as opposed to says, oh no, it's all mine. So I think there is a way forward on it. It's not easy though.
It's not, and particularly for people who experience and change. So people that have been around for generations, people that perhaps don't have that perspective you said earlier on, that aesthetically there are other things that you could have in a village, in a city, and they don't know any better, so to speak. Any ideas about bringing them on that journey? And have you experienced any of that kind of resistance with people you've met, where you're saying, I'm the new vicar here in the parish, and people are like, oh no thanks, or
Well, I think grief, it has a real key. So the grief sort of cycle has a real key part to play in understanding change. So change actually is a lot like experiencing grief, the loss, the not quite understanding, the wishing it were the same as it used to be, the emotions that come with that loss. And so navigating change is incredibly tricky, particularly for those who've been in something the longest. So I remember, to give an example, I remember losing my dad, and a few years ago now, my dad was great, like brilliant man, and losing him the year afterwards was just a mess. It was a brutal mess. And looking back, you're like, wow, how did we get through that? At the same time, I was journeying alongside. We'd just planted a church into a different place than this, journeying with some of the people there who'd been there for 40 years. One of them had been there for 47 years, I think. Wow. And I could see parallels between my losing of my dad and her losing of her church identity. And that change process, actually the grief process, helped me navigate the change process for her. And I'm sure there's loads more to it than that, but being able to stand with people saying, I know it's really hard, but here's the end goal. Because I think vision matters. I think being able to say to someone, this is where we're headed, and this is how we're going to get there, really matters. And that's what we're trying to do on a small scale with the church. Actually, there are changes that we're bringing in. There are things we're amending. We're trying to hold on to the real sort of core stuff, but we're also trying to make change in order to make space for new things. And I wonder if there's a way for councils to sort of journey some of that with people. I don't know how, but without spending lots of money on like community pastors. But
well, that could be a thing. I think it's really interesting because I think that's going to be needed. I think with what there's loads of new development in that part of Stratford, the Olympic Village, around Bow even, and all the other places you've mentioned. And there's someone who's lived through all my life. I see and feel that change come in, and being able to project a vision and bring people along, I think will be really important, so that there is a cohesiveness that remains, because this area has been subject to change anyway, from Canary Wharf, the Docklands, and other stuff happened. So it's been through change before. The people continue to change, and the environment and etc. will continue to change. So that's been really interesting.
It's part of the beauty as well, though, is that I think there's a willingness to be like, okay, let's try here, which I really like. Like people are, this is what I love, but all right, I'll try. And I find that really inspiring, actually.
Yeah, almost entrepreneurial in some ways. Or,
a sense of we'll give it a go, and actually we can make it work, and this is how I'd like it to be. But all right, well, let's go with that, and I've loved that.
Yeah, it's definitely something in the water here, but this has been really interesting, Si.
Oh well, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for your time. I think we'll end it there.
Yeah.